Welcome everybody, I'm James. This is our, I guess you'd call it a farm. It's like somewhere between a garden and a farm. But we have a training program here. We take people who are interested in learning about market farming and potentially pursuing a career path in agriculture. So they come here and we go through the different facets of farming like irrigation, pest control, crop planning, food safety. We go to other farms, but this is kind of like our home base. So this is where the students kind of hone in on their skills. So mostly geared towards vegetable growing, that program. But I think today we wanted to look more at like the orchard and the pollinator habitat. So if we have time, we can circle back and I'll show you our plots. These are all no-till. We do cover cropping on them. We have the high tunnels. We have some cool irrigation stuff going on. So if you guys want to check that out, we can on our way back. But I'll just take you on kind of a serpentine loop through the orchard, and I'll try, there's not a lot of spaces that are very open, so I'll try to accommodate the group. I might even try to like kind of get in the middle of you guys. But yeah, let's take a little stroll and ask questions if you have any, okay? There are venomous copperhead snakes out here, so it's really not a concern as long as you just kind of look where you're walking. Don't walk in any like overgrowth or leaves or anything like that. Do you guys get that in the back? Venomous snakes? Okay, good. So yeah, raise your hand if you have an orchard or if you've started an orchard. 2 people? Okay, well, just shout out like what kind of farmers are we? What are we growing? What are our crops?
Beef, wheat, barley, cover crop, cover graze.
You're a herb farmer.
Yeah.
Who else? What are we growing? Vegetables? Are we doing cattle or?
Cattle, vegetables.
Okay. Raise your hand if you'd maybe be interested in integrating perennial woody crops like fruit trees, things like that. Okay, cool. So maybe you're not doing it yet, but you can kind of get a taste for what that's like here. So in Northeast Oklahoma, as you can feel today, it's very humid. So we have a lot of pest and fungal pressure on our fruit trees. So some trees are just, unless you want to spray, use conventional sprays and get on that, whole treadmill. You really want to stay away from stone fruits. It's kind of that simple. So plums, peaches, apricots, nectarines, you're gonna have a hard time. I will show you some of those trees we have. We have some stone fruits because actually in a drought year where it's really dry, dew point's really low, that fungal pressures and pest pressure is not that bad, and you can actually get some fruit with no spray. But our whole orchard's no spray, so operating from that that direction we wanted to go, like we didn't want to spray in our orchard. So we picked all species and cultivars that are supposed to be adapted to our bioregion. We got most of our trees from a nursery called Ames Orchard and Nursery. Raise your hand if you've heard of that. It's over in Fayetteville. Yeah, so they specialize in cultivars for the hot, humid South, okay? So what that looks like as far as what types of fruits grow well here, European pears, really good. All the old timers in Oklahoma will tell you like pear trees are pretty easy to grow. This is another one. Does anyone know what this tree is? Scientific name is Ziziphus jujube. People call it commonly the Chinese date. Okay, so it's from a similar climate, hot, humid summers, cold winters, only in mainland China. So it's really well adapted to our climate here. It is grafted, so this is either a Li or a Lang. You make labels for the trees. Make sure to put them in a digital database because those labels are going to wear off in the weather. So it's on a spreadsheet. But yeah, it's either the Li or the Lang. You can see it's flowering right now. If you guys can come up here, and actually some of the fruits already been pollinated and it's forming. It's a very late flowering fruit tree relative to the other ones. I mean, look at the size of the pears. They flowered over 6 weeks ago, so the fruit's already developing. The thing with that is you're going to get fruit way later in the season. So it's kind of cool to have that spread of like pears kind of come first. Well, actually apples come first and then pears, and then you get the Chinese dates. So we'll move on down a little bit. More Asian pears there. That's a Magnus. That's one of the best varieties of, I'm sorry, not Asian, European pear. That's one of the best varieties of European pears you can grow. They're really big and they're really juicy. You have to like eat them over the sink because they kind of drips down your face. This shrub, anybody know this one? No? American hazelnut. So this is the native hazelnut. So we kind of incorporate understory shrubs in between the two, every two fruit trees. So you'll see kind of like native stuff mixed in, and I'll try to point it out. This is a really cool one. Come on in. And you guys can, in the front, can you like circle around a little bit? Kind of do like a half dome thing. So maybe like if you're a farmer, you've probably heard about introducing like legumes into your cropping system to fix nitrogen. So you can do that in with woody plants too. So this is actually our native shrub indigo, and it is a nitrogen fixer. So you'll notice these spaced throughout the orchard in between trees. How much nitrogen it fixes, I'm really not sure, but we put them in there and they're not really hurting anything. So, and they just got done flowering. They're really awesome flowers in May. How about this tree? What'd I hear? Pawpaw. Yeah, it's the pawpaw. Who's heard of the pawpaw? It's the largest sized fruit that's native to North America. So it's been here a long time. It only needs 3 hours of sunlight a day to produce fruit. It doesn't really want more than that. So it's a perfect thing to add into the orchard in between trees. Okay? They take a long time to have fruit. We'll try to remind me, we'll circle around to the pond and you'll see a tree that's older that actually has fruit on it. Okay? Let's see. Okay, yeah, peach. So this is last year's fruit. You want to pass that back? That is a fungal rot on there called brown rot, and it pretty much will get your peaches every time if you're not spraying. The other thing that can happen to peaches, it's not really happening on this tree really bad, but I'll try to point it out, boring insects. They bore into the trunk and the limbs, and they'll just kill the whole tree. So let's talk a little bit about the herbaceous layer. So we got the woody layer, the trees. We'll point out some more shrubs as we go, but you can also grow things in the understory. So grab that, pass that around, smell it. Oh, my little pack. Sorry, pass that around a little bit. So what you're passing around right now, those are called perennial garlic chives. So they're actually really aggressive. So they're a great option to kind of keep weeds down in the orchard. And then in the fall, they flower and they attract a lot of beneficial insects. We have all kinds of stuff in here. Like these are wild strawberries that we have growing in the understory. This is the native yarrow. It's an edible herb. So I'll try to point out more herbs as we go. But there's lots of shade tolerant things that can do great in the orchard. So let's keep rolling.
Where do you get all your wood chips?
My neighbors are tree trimmers, and they dropped them. Yep.
Awesome.
And then as you'll learn about probably when you're talking to Jack, the SHIP grant paid us to mulch the orchard, and I was able to hire help because it took a lot of manual labor to actually move all those chips in there. This is a really cool herb. This is called lemon balm. You guys know this one? Yep. Yeah, if you want to, when you walk by, grab a leaf, crush it in your fingers, and it just kind of calms you down. It's nice. We have some kind of random elderberry in there. This is a really random tree. This is the only citrus tree that'll grow in our climate. It's the only frost hardy one, frost hardy enough. It's called the trifoliate orange. And I don't think the fruit quality is very good, but I decided to grow one anyways. And I've heard they're kind of invasive, so we're gonna kind of see. That's kind of experimental. Okay, duck under this peach tree.
Do you prune your peach trees?
No, I don't give any attention to my peach trees because I already know they're just not gonna do well, so I don't really do anything. You could try to prune for better ventilation, which would help reduce the incidence of fungal issues like brown rot, but it's not gonna be enough without sprays. The other thing you're gonna notice, you can pass that around. That's the oriental fruit moth. So that's a caterpillar that crawls into the flower and then crawls in and out of the fruit. So those you also have lots of bugs in your stone fruits. And then right behind you, I'm sorry, this is the boring insect. So if you see that gummy stuff on the trunk, that's insects boring into the wood. And they just really like the prunus stuff. But you won't get that on the pears or jujubes. Whoops, sorry. Watch your step. Okay, apples are kind of in between stone fruits and like the pear jujubes. Certain varieties can do okay. This is an Arkansas black apple, but you're still gonna have some issues. And Guy, the guy from Guy Ames Orchard and Nursery, he's like a guru. He works for ATRA actually, and he's worked for the University of Arkansas. He knows a lot about fruit tree management and organics. He's saying that apples are even becoming more and more prone to pests. So if you're like thinking about planting an orchard out, go for pears and jujubes and the native fruits for sure. I would kind of, unless you know you're going to be committed to spraying, I would stay away from apples and stone fruits. There's a nice big jujube right above you right there. And we'll come on down. Oh, I'm going to pivot over here real quick. This is a cool understory plant for orchards. Does anyone know this one? It's in the sunflower family. It produces an edible tuber. Jerusalem artichokes. Yep.
Hold up.
What's that?
I said don't choke, hold up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is actually a native plant. In about August it flowers and it looks like sunflowers, and then it starts putting energy into forming tubers, and you can harvest the tubers in the fall. And you can see if you have like a lot of weed pressure in your orchard, because when you plant an orchard it's usually a full sun site because you want your trees to be able to get sunlight, but at the same time it's going to have a lot of like grass pressure, right? And that can kind of like overwhelm the trees. So planting this actually is a really good ground cover, and you can grow them out for artichokes, or you can just come in here and like mow them down as a chop and drop mulch. But they've really filled in the space, and you can see like there's no weed pressure under there, right? So they do spread kind of like bamboo. So if you plant Jerusalem artichokes, just know that they're gonna kind of move out. The only reason they're not expanding beyond this point is because I mow. Kind of like bamboo. You can contain a bamboo patch if you mow around it, kind of. But yeah, it seems to be keeping them in check. So these are all older trees. This is where I started, and then I just kind of worked my way down.
When you say started, what year?
These would be like 7-year-old trees. Okay, so producing. And then the trees just kind of get progressively younger as we go. Let's come down here and I'll show you an Asian pear. Asian pears are really, really good. Yeah, you can come in on around. Okay, so if you want to grow fruit that's going to be really presentable for market, it's Asian pears and jujubes, but Asian pears, because I think more people are more familiar with Asian pears than they are jujubes. These Asian pears, no spray, no care, a little bit of pruning. The fruit quality, when we pick these in the summer, it looks like it would sell on a grocery store shelf. There's no blemishes or anything. And this variety is the Shinko Asian pear. But they're really good. The difference is with the Asian pears is you can eat them fresh off the tree like you would an apple, whereas the European pears, you pick them before they're ripe, and you actually have to let them cure for like 2 to 3 weeks, like in crates. So these are nice because you can just pick them right off the tree and they're ready to eat. Underneath here, here's another understory plant that can be nice, mint. And when mint flowers, it attracts a lot of very beneficial insects, particularly parasitic insects, the types of flies and wasps that predate on your fruit tree pest. So if you want to try to break, the idea with that is breaking pest cycles is to introduce, really good above ground habitat for those beneficial insects so they can come in and do their job.
Does the mint not spread too?
Oh yeah, the mint spreads. So I wouldn't plant mint like in my vegetable garden, right? That'd be like a really bad idea. But in an orchard where there's lots of weed pressure, these more aggressive plants actually can be really good. One thing about maintenance with the orchard, you're probably not seeing a lot of it because we recently did maintenance, but here it is. In Oklahoma, if you stop mowing an area, it's gonna do what? Turn into a forest. That's what happens. So you stop mowing an area of woody plants, we get enough rainfall here that if you go through the successions, it'll be weeds and then grasses and then shrubs and blackberries and sumacs, but then it'll eventually graduate to, it wants to become a forest, just like what you see behind you. And this is that happening. So this is an ash tree. Didn't get it off by the roots, but you're constantly, if you have an orchard and you just mow around the trees, that's different. You're gonna keep it in that early stage of succession. But if you wanna do a food forest where you have understory stuff growing that you don't mow, or at least you don't mow regularly, you're gonna get volunteer trees. So that is one thing to think about planning for. A lot of people, like sources online, are kind of anecdotal sources, will say, oh, you wanna do a food forest, you just plant it all, put your cardboard down, and then you walk away and just let it do its thing. That's not true. If you do that, you'll get trees like this, elms, ashes, whatever's in your, oaks. And those trees are gonna get big and tall and they'll shade out your orchard. And they become increasingly harder to remove the longer they get established. So like you wanna go through once a year with a shovel after a rain, maybe in the fall or spring, and you wanna remove non-desired woody species. Okay? Let me check where we're doing on time. And we might just check out some pollinator stuff.
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes? Okay. If you want to look at how small the trees were, in the beginning, just look down there to the last rows. Those are like 1-year-old trees. Okay, so you can kind of see the progression. And then you'll see some unevenness. Like this tree is quite tall. So this tree is probably like 5 or 6 years old. But then that apple tree right there is not as tall. That's probably because a tree died and we had to replace it with something else. So you'll get some of that too. That tree, that's an amazing tree. That is a Turnbull pear, and it's a cross between a European and an Asian pear. So I just got fruit on that this year. I'm really excited to see how it goes. If I can get through here, yeah, we'll move up here and I'll show you a little bit what we're doing with pollinator habitat. Oh, this tree is loaded. Oh, I'm so excited for that.
What do you do with all the fruit?
We sell it. We sell it to Fresh RX, the Food is Medicine program. Yeah, selling fruit's a lot easier. Like my main gig is I'm a consultant. Like I help people set up their, orchards and gardens and stuff like that. Vegetables, it's really hard to make money in vegetables, and a lot of people grow vegetables. So you're kind of competing with everybody, and it kind of drives all the prices down. Not a lot of people have orchards. So if you can get an orchard started now, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, you can have that type. And if you pick the right varieties, I'm telling you, like the amount of maintenance on this orchard is maybe like 20 hours a year. It's very, very low. Last year, off of some of our like mid-sized pear trees, we got like 100 pounds of fruit, and we were able to sell those for like $4 a pound. So, maybe potentially, once they get bigger, you can get closer to like 200 to 300 pounds of fruit. So you could make like up to $1,000 per tree. The thing is you want to pick varieties that aren't going to have all the blemishes on them, because you can't really sell your fruit for very much money when it looks all rough. If it's just for your family orchard, you can do that and kind of pick around the bad spots. But if you're trying to sell it, you really want blemish-free stuff. And Asian pears and jujubes are the ticket for that. Okay, let's come on up a little bit. Hopefully no one's allergic to bees. Just stay away from the beehive if you are, or I guess just stay away from the beehive in general. I'll let the rest of the group catch up a little bit. Oh. Okay, can you raise your hand if you're doing anything with pollinator habitat? Okay, not very many. Who's interested in doing something with pollinator habitat? Does anyone know why we would even want to create pollinator habitat? Like, why would it be worth our time and resources to do that?
Better fruit.
Yeah, you want to attract pollinators to your site because pollinators are going to increase yields. Since I've planted pollinators, since I've gotten a beehive, I've seen the fruit yields in the orchard go up significantly because like every flower gets pollinated. So yeah, we want to create this beneficial habitat for sure. It also attracts beneficial insects that can predate on insect pests in the garden. So the thing with the pollinator habitat is I really couldn't justify weeding it. I tried that for a few years. Like I'd plant these plants and then I'd try to come in and I'd try to mulch it, but then I'd try to come in and have to like weed out the non-native, like non-target species to let the natives flourish. That was taking up way too much time and it wasn't proving successful. I actually always kind of hated on this fabric just because of my background, but honestly, it can be really, really helpful. So I put this fabric down, cut holes into it, plant the natives right into that. And the natives, this is their second season. So they started as just like little plugs, and now they're really flourishing. I probably will, once they get established, I probably will go ahead and like take the fabric up. But for now, it's a really good placeholder, and the weed pressure is really low. So like this Asiatic daylily dayflower right here, it's growing in the cracks, but you know, if I just took a few minutes and kind of came through here, it's so much less weeding to do if you use this fabric. With the pollinator habitat installation, you want to pick lots of different species that flower at different times. So right now, like we have the coneflowers going, the purple poppy mallows, but then pretty soon we'll have like the rattlesnake master, the milkweed, and so on. And then in the fall we have things like asters and goldenrods. So we try to provide like a buffet that spans as much of the season as possible, and you do that by diversifying what species you plant. So there's always something to eat for the pollinators.
What type of fabric is this and how long does it last?
So it's a geotextile fabric. Like DeWitt is the brand that's kind of known for making that stuff. How long does it last? That depends. So it's a poly material, so exposure to sunlight is what reduces its life expectancy. But the cool thing is with the natives is they really fill in. Within a couple years you won't even be able to see the fabric, and that's probably when I'll take it up. But if you just had fabric laying down, say for like, some people will put this down for like a pathway, like they don't want to spend time weeding a pathway and they don't want to spray, so they'll just put this down in the garden so they have like a weed-free pathway. That's going to be exposed to full sun, and that's going to degrade rapidly. Now some people will put mulch on these, but I kind of, in my experience, have learned that's not great because weeds start to grow on top of the fabric in the mulch. So if you give like the weeds a media to grow in, they'll actually just start growing in that on top of the fabric. So I actually prefer to not put any mulch on it, which is less work, you know. It kind of, you know, the aesthetic is like, oh, it's black fabric, you know, it's plastic, that's not great. But again, it's just a transitional step until we can get these natives established, and then we'll pull it up. And we can reuse it. We can put it somewhere else and plant new natives into it. This is more shade tolerant stuff here, obviously under this really bad shade peach tree. There's that brown rot I'm talking about. So see, that's taking over the fruits. Yeah, so unless you're going to spray some really harsh chemicals, again, stay away from those trees. Yeah, more native stuff here. More mid-season stuff like this is a really pretty native. This is the blazing star, so that'll be flowering pretty soon. But those are asters. Those are going to flower in the fall, and goldenrod in the back. So yeah, that stuff flowers a little bit later. Now, if you guys want, come on up here. I'll show you another way to establish pollinator habitat. 5 minutes. Perfect. So another way to establish pollinator habitat is from seed, which can actually be a good option. So this plot right here, if you come this way, so this plot is just starting to flower, but this was done from seed. Now, you can't just go out to like your pasture if you have like Bermuda grass or Johnson grass and throw seed down and expect a good stand of wildflowers. But if you have native grass pasture, you have a better chance of that succeeding because these wild forbs co-evolved with native grasses. But Johnson grass, Bermuda grass will just choke them out. So what we did here first, who's heard of soil solarization? You guys heard of that? Use a clear plastic and you put it down over the plot in the summer. It's the same plastic that you use on the hoop houses. So we did that here last summer. You do it for July and August and it'll kill any perennial vegetation that's there. So Johnson grass, Bermuda grass, violets, any types of aggressive, perennial vegetation, herbaceous or woody. So that was done, and then in the fall we sow the seed, and actually most wildflowers need that cold stratification period of going through the winter, and then they germinate sometime in the spring. And you can see, we have a really thick stand, and there's no more Bermuda grass, no more Johnson grass, all wildflowers. And then all this stuff will go to seed, and that seed will go back down, and we'll probably give it a mow sometime in February, right before everything starts to spring back up. So it's a little different. The other way we use fabric and then we put transplants through the fabric. This way we solarize and we throw the seed down. And of course, when you do it like this, it's going to be very random. You're just broadcasting seeds. So like the way the species pop up, it's going to be very random. Whereas if you do the transplant method, you can kind of control where the species go. Native American seed is a great resource for bioregionally appropriate seed. Yep. And be careful on that trellis, don't lean on it. It's not necessarily, it could hold a toddler back, but probably not an adult. Okay, I think we're probably about at time.
Yeah.
Any questions before we switch off?
All right, guys, thanks for coming out to the farm tour. My name is Jack Titchener. I half work for the Oklahoma Conservation Commission and I also half work for the NRCS. I am a resource for homeowners, producers, farmers, anybody that just wants to talk about conservation or soil. I don't know what James talked to you guys about, which is just kind of like an overview of what he does, kind of his classes. Mostly orchard stuff.
Plant ID.
Plant ID, oh, that's fun. You guys want to walk and we'll go up to the front and we'll talk about some of his high tunnels and his other vegetable garden? Okay. All right. So the agency I work for, the Oklahoma Conservation Commission, one of the programs they run, and we call programs, is basically like opportunities for producers to enhance conservation on their farm. And so Oklahoma Conservation Commission, through every district or every county in Oklahoma, there's a conservation office. They offer programs called the State Cost Share. State Cost Share works on resource concerns. Your concern could be like water erosion, could be plant health, could be some fencing for your animals, water distribution, and basically they try to get a practice installed to help with the conservation. The NRCS helps with programming, but sometimes they can be a lot more complicated. There's a lot of things to fill out. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with the federal government before, but they require a lot of information. Okay, it's hard to get into some of the programs. So the state has realized that there needs to be maybe a middle ground in between those two. And so we developed, again, we're a state agency, so we like acronyms too. It's called the SHIP program, like a boat, a ship. So Soil Health Implementation Program. Okay, so we've gone around and interviewed, gosh, probably about 300 producers throughout the state. and talked about kind of their production systems, where they're at, what they feel about soil health, conservation, other things, and kind of selected some participants to help us showcase some practices to help increase soil health. We're going to do a 3-year project for James, and he's going to spend close to about $40,000 to implement as many practices that fit his production system and his land and what makes sense for him and his operation, okay? And so here recently, not through our program, but through another one, like we talk about, like what is a program or what did he get? He got one of those high tunnels through an equip program, okay? And so one of the ones now that we're doing for SHIP is I am helping pay him to actually mulch his orchard and his crops over here. And so I'm a soil scientist. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there's more that is alive below the ground than there is above ground, okay? And so what we're doing with our SHIP program is basically trying to get these producers to implement practices that we know increase soil health. And so one of the main ones that he's doing right now is mulching. So he luckily knows somebody that lives up the way here that owns a tree trimming business. And so he's been getting these dropped off here. But he understands the benefits of mulch. And so if you really wanted to, I could go get some thermometers out of my truck and we can measure the temperature of that bare soil versus some of the soil that's underneath that mulch, and I can guarantee you that that one's less, right? And so it's just one of those things is we try to get producers to implement these practices. They might not understand the full brevity of like what everything that it can do, but they just understand that it's beneficial, okay? And so if you guys want, we can go walk down here and look at some of his high tunnels, some of his blackberries, some of his asparagus. If you guys didn't notice, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 pawpaw trees that are growing on the edge there near the water. So he's got a nice mulberry tree here. That's something about James, is he really likes to fill up his space with plants that are productive. So here about a month ago, James had a cover crop growing on all of that part of his garden up there, and he has since cut it down with a flail mower and basically buried it, and then now he's growing plants on the top of it over there. This part of his garden is more of a perennial part of his garden. One of the reasons why, as you can see, this is a more perennial part is look at the slope of his garden. Okay, this is down near low. He wants to protect his soil from eroding from this slope, and so he keeps this kind of vegetated all year round to make sure that he keeps the soil where it's supposed to, and then he tries to grow up a little bit up here. I don't know if he talked a lot about what his farm does or why he's here. So what this place is if you look at it, it's not very large. It's not to get vegetable production out of. What this place is James teaches a class for his business called Green Country Permaculture. And what he wants to do is take people that have never grown before and teach them the basics of how to grow, but to grow sustainably, organically, to help build the soil and grow good crops, not to deplete the soil. And so every year he takes in a new class of people, teaches them all about soil science, soil health, growing crops, production systems, and then kind of lets them loose in here and lets them try it on their own, basically, before they have a chance to either purchase land, lease land, and go out and do it on their, do they even like to do it? And so that's part of his thing, is to just help educate, but then also give people a chance to do it, okay? And so here, let's walk in these tunnels here, or at least we can just look at them. And so he had a bunch of cilantro, some other stuff going into seed. He's got his tomatoes planted in here. His potatoes look to be, gosh, they're almost about done, some of them. And so he might be coming in to plant something here pretty soon. And then he's got a bunch of hot peppers, he told me, right here. And then some more potatoes. And he's got a bunch of carrots and then some beets. And so, does anybody know what this plant is?
Oh, he was telling me. Is that the artichokes? Jerusalem artichokes? No. No. I don't know what it is.
That's, yeah, yeah. Jerusalem artichokes. Yeah.
Yes, he did tell us.
So, and then you guys toured the orchard. So this is another one. I got James to mulch more of his orchard through our SHIP program. And so I got him to install that rainwater tank over there. Because one of the resource concerns could be, now you've installed this high tunnel, it's got plastic. When it rains, the rain doesn't make it into the high tunnel anymore, right? So what are we gonna do, or how can we water that without increasing your water bill? And so that's a good way for him to capture normal storage or just wasted water that he can then repipe in and use in his high tunnels. So one of the other ones, James, when you guys were looking up, is some of his native plants up there. Obviously he has an orchard. It needs pollinators, and so what better to attract pollinators than native plants from Oklahoma? And so we've got him to plant a big section of native plants out there on the back of his house. I came through and I did a soil test for James. I did these 2 houses, and then I did his orchard separately. We're fixing to get the results back on that. And then he had some tests about 5 years ago that we'll be able to compare them to. And so that should be some pretty interesting information. Do you guys have any questions about what he's doing here, or any of his practices? Or, like I said, it's not much of a production system. It's more of just an educational place.
So you come in and make recommendations and then help them implement?
Yes, basically I kind of know a little about a lot of stuff, okay? And then I come through, and I can say specifically for the SHIP program, but just in general, is I'm just a resource, okay? People have production questions, concerns. Hey, my field's eroding. Hey, this, or just have questions in general. Yes, I come in and either help with the answer, help them find the answer. We find people that know, we get people out there to do things for them. And so yes, basically I'm a resource. I went to school for agricultural science. I worked at Philbrook Museum of Art for about 10 years and designed them several gardens. In charge of all the water features, all the trees. Worked at Scissors Hill Hydroponic Production Greens. Did a bunch of hydroponic green growing. So I've done a lot, worked in production nurseries. And so I've done a lot of growing and other stuff like that. And so yeah, basically I'm heavy on the science side, but that's that hard part, is where does science and practicality like kind of meet and mesh? And so that's the role of a lot of these programs, is how effectual is your conservation if no one ever practices it, right? And so that's what we've got to do, is kind of meet that producer of where they're at. Is I've got a lot of book knowledge and this is the way it should be done and science says this, right? But in practicality, how can you actually implement that time-wise, money-wise, all of these things? And so that's what we've got to work with, is all of the stuff together. And so yeah, that's basically kind of what I do, is people come to me with lots of problems, and then it's basically up to either me or them to solve them. And so no one calls to gloat, everyone calls for problems. But that's what I do basically, is figure out what's going wrong or what can we do better. And so most people are kind of doing the same things wrong. And so it's not, I wouldn't say it's not difficult, but it's, once you learn a few things like that, it's pretty easy to like, okay, let's do this, or let's do that, or like we were saying on the way over here, I can't reinvent the seasons. Like, you can only grow certain vegetables in certain types of seasons, right? And so we just work in the plants and the soil and the other stuff, and it can tell you what's wrong, but you really got to know what it's saying. And so yeah, that's my main thing, is just, I'm like a detective, is I got to pick up a lot of clues and talk to you a lot and look at the landscape and do a lot of stuff and be like, okay, yeah, this, or what about that, or, and so it's interesting. It can be.
So are you just in the Tulsa area?
I actually go, my area is, let's see, Okmulgee, Tulsa, Wagner, Rogers, Washington County, Osage County. I go a lot for the state. It's basically the eastern part of the state. And so, yeah, I travel a lot. I'll go out to Tahlequah. I go a lot of places. So anybody that wants to hear me talk. And so some people don't, but I'll still show up anyway. And so, yeah, it's just, I'm mainly here to just help people, either homeowners or producers or farmers, with their production systems, or, you know, erosion, or just concerns, tree concerns, or whatever it is.
So we're live basically in Sepulpa, homeowners. We have land in Wagner, but we have a Tulsa address, but Sepulpa water, whatever. We're in Sepulpa. And we have a super slopey, we have like an acre and a third. Are there things that we can do?
Yeah, so, I mean, so his is one of the best examples of, I mean, it's not terraced, but look at how
It's not terraced, I wish it were.
well, he didn't even just what he's done here, these swales. If you look, they're perpendicular to the slope, right? So we've all seen pictures of the Grand Canyon. We know what water can do, okay? Give it time and enough speed and it's gonna carve a canyon. So what these things are doing right here is it's slowing the water and making it go in or making it go around. And so basically slow the velocity of that water somehow, whether that's terracing, which is a lot of earthwork, whether that's some sort of bioswales that he's also saying I can get fruit tree production out of it too, right? Or that's just depends on what's feasible for you. Like I said, time, money, do you even have access to these things, right? And so, I mean, it'd be one thing for you, it's like, yeah, I'm a farmer and I got a bulldozer, I can do whatever I want, right? Versus someone else is like, I don't have anything. And so how would we work with that? And so, but every county in Oklahoma has a district office, so a state OCC, which I work for, and an NRCS, a federal component. Every county has one, okay? Go talk to them. You have paid your federal taxes and your state taxes. You have already paid for me. Come talk to me, bug me. You've already paid me. Like, if you don't come talk to me, we don't know you exist. And so once you come in and start to make yourself known, all of these things are, I can give you all that information. I cannot maybe pay for you to get in a program because sometimes that's very competitive. But at a minimum, I can give you everything that that other person got, but I can't pay for it. But I'll give you all of the full, I will bury you in folders of stuff.
Okay, yeah, we've got some. So if we are participating in some programs in Wagner, can we still participate in some at our home in Creek County?
I don't know, that's a very good question. So, what kind of programs are you participating in Wagner?
Right this second, we're not, but we were doing the wildflower program and then we started to do this, but we backed out
We did some of the soil stuff.
Yeah, we did some of the soil stuff out in our hay fields and things like that. But presently we're not. They've ended.
Oh, okay.
Last year too. But we'd like to get some different things going, but then also at the house.
It depends on, so if you were through the federal or NRCS, depending on the program, they would require all of your acres to be enrolled no matter where they were. Okay, if you own them or you're in production of them, they're going to be in the program. So some of the state stuff isn't that stringent of it.
Okay, and because we just bought the house in town, just not even a year ago, in July a year.
It depends, I'll just say it depends on the program or the agency. But that's what we've realized for the state or the OCC is that, you know, some of the federal stuff is very difficult to get into. Some of the state cost share is just one practice and that's it. And so how can we fill that gap? So, but I would encourage you to go and talk to them.
Yeah.
So they should not be being busy here. We're fixing to be done with CSP, which is called Conservation Stewardship Program. I think that's next week. We got to start obligating contracts. And so after that, I'd give them like a couple of weeks. They're they're ready to go. They should be.
Okay.
So that is what we're here for. Is that 80% of my job is technical assistance. Okay, that's what I'm here for to do, is to do this kind of stuff. Is just talk to you about problems and brainstorm ideas of how to do things differently. So
who do we contact again?
one of they just be, it depends on what county you're in, but your local Wagner, it'd be the Wagner County NRCS office. And so let's see, Kendra is in that office right now. And then the OCC person, her name is Rhonda Bowman. And so I just went and gave a presentation at the Wagner Rotary Club. And I go to Wagner all the time. And so our offices work together.
Yeah, they're right in Wagner.
Or one of the ones Wagner was too busy with something, they asked us. We went out and did what's called CTA, Conservation Technical Assistance. Sorry, we love acronyms. And so that was, I swear, half of 2 years was the hardest part, was just to learn what these people are talking about. And so, yeah, so we'll go out and that's just our normal technical assistance. If they can't do it, they'll send one of us out to then go do it. Josh, that's on the tour over here, he went out to one just this morning, right down 71st Street, 305th West Avenue. We're at 230th. You're fixing to go to Brenda Nichols, is another one that we got a high tunnel through the NRCS. She's a cut flower grower. And so
How hard is it to get one?
First off, they're based on what's called a resource concern, which means you're already doing something, it's not going well. Well, so high tunnel is for plant productivity and health. If you already don't have a garden there, how can you know if your plants are productive or not? So you got to have the plants first. Then we come out and run. We've got a lot of tools that we're just gonna run a lot of tools, and it's not just because I say so. We've got to answer a lot of questions, okay? Then basically, what your concern is, how bad is it, versus what are we gonna do to fix it? Do you wanna do just one thing? You wanna do 10 things? What do you wanna do? Depending on what your concern is, how bad is it versus what do you want to do? What do you want to do has points tied to it. Some of the practices that you're going to do only have like 5 points. Some will have like 50 points because they really make a difference for the concern, right? And so depending on what you can and cannot do versus what actually makes an effect on the concern is what you're going to get ranked at on everybody on this third of the state, on this team. And so based on those numbers, yeah, because you got to compete against everybody because everyone's got a concern, right? And so based on those, you get a score. I have to put you in a computer. And then based on that, it'll rank you based on how I ask these questions. And it's a bunch of questions. And then another one is called a geospatial layer, which means where your farm is in relation to a store, a produce stand, or something else that sells produce year round. How close are you to that? That'll give you more points too if you're further away. And so there's all these different things that I've got to answer in order for them to just build this up to then them basically say yes or no. And then depending on that, you could be a beginning farmer or rancher, you could be a veteran, you could be in a different fund pool that you've got different, I mean, it's complicated. And so the main thing is you're already growing there and you have some sort of concern and you want to do something about it, right? And so based on that, they'd be like, hey, this is how much, and I don't like to talk money or programs, but this is how much we're paying to install a high tunnel. And then you would say, yeah, I could afford that. Or that makes sense to me. The tunnel costs $13,000 and you're gonna pay me 10? Yeah, that's money I don't wanna spend, but in 3 years, I'm gonna have it and still get production out of it. That's where my money comes from. Usually these programs, you're not gonna make any money. You're probably barely gonna break even. You're actually probably gonna spend money. But that's the whole thing is, would you rather spend $100 to get a $14,000 high tunnel that you're gonna get 5 years of production out of? Or would you rather just do it on your own? And so because then you get all of our resources of this is how you're gonna install it. This is the people you're gonna call to try to get a kit from. This is all the, right? Can you help me find somebody to put it up? Yeah, we'll call some people that have done it. And so that's the advantage of that kind of stuff, is to find those kind of things. Some people we've had, Dr. Clark up there, he applied for 3 years. And then the third year, he finally got in. And then we've had other people, Brenda, she applied 1 year, got in that year. And so it depends on how many people are applying for those things, kind of basically. So it was a weird year last year too. We had IRA money and other stuff. So it's gonna be a little different this year. So suffice to say, you're actually doing it, you have a concern, you want to do something about it. And then they'll come out and basically talk to you about high tunnel or alternatives to high tunnels. And so.
How much wind can they take?
They can take quite a bit because most of these we tell people to buy it from a commercial kit. You cannot build it yourself, you gotta buy it from somebody. And what that means is there's an engineering drawing. So what happens is it's called our ECS, our environmental people basically have looked at their sheet and said, it'll withstand Oklahoma's wind loads, okay? Now here's the other side, which has happened to some of our other people. If, this is like a big way down the road, if you were to get into programs, if you were to install a high tunnel, if we were to pay you for all that stuff, we would hand you some papers that has operation and maintenance on it. Okay, so it would tell you right there, if you're expecting an unusually high wind load, you better take that plastic off of it or otherwise it's your bad. If it's snowing real bad and you're gonna lose the frame, you better come out and slash the plastic immediately because we won't, it's gone. And so we've had people that if you don't follow the operation and maintenance plan, that's it, you're done. And so every practice we give you has an operation and maintenance plan because we've got to make sure that you do it correctly. And it's not like we're the experts and it's just, there's a very specific way that we want you to do it in order, it's called judicious expenditure of taxpayer dollars, okay? Which means if I'm using your tax dollars to buy you a high tunnel, I wanna make sure you do it right and you do it correctly. It's gonna last as long as it's supposed to last. And when we spend the money, we're doing what we say we're doing. So when people say it, we're doing it. And so it's actually quite difficult. So there's a lot of different rules and that's way down in the weeds down there, okay? Suffice it to say is any NRCS office is available to you to come and ask questions, okay, about your production system. Whether it's trees, whether it's wool, whether it's bees, whether it's cut flowers, whether it's fish, whatever it is. Okay, that's what we're here for, is natural resources.
For bees now?
Maybe not necessarily bees, but the FSA has declared them as livestock, which means you can get insurance on them. Yeah, so if you lose them, you can get insurance. So some of the programs we're trying to, they're written so vaguely that you've got to interpret them a certain way, and so it's hard to interpret them sometimes if they're vague. And so that's our hard part, is to try to make them less vague.